Nearing the end of the year, which means it's time to look at the year gone by. In fact, Wizikey, a PR SaaS startup, launched the hottest startups of 2020 report, and all the top 10 startups on the list are unicorns, with Paytm topping the charts, followed by Dream11, Zomato, Ola, Swiggy, Big Basket, Oyo, Byju's, Snapdeal and Unacademy. To know more about the key findings of the report, Megha Vishwanath caught up with Sanjeev Bikhchandani, founder and executive vice chairman of InfoEdge, and Aakriti, Bhargava, founder of Wizikey. Now, Megha started, by asking Aakriti about what stood out to her post the report. Take a listen.
Yes, there were very interesting trends that were there in the report. For example, among the 100, we saw around 19 from fintech as a sector, which means if you just look at the year was totally taken by the fintech startups, which were trying to play a pivotal role in helping banks serve the lockdown customer. So that was one. Secondly, we saw some very interesting sectors come up and startups from these sectors. For example, SaaS. Although they were not very hugely in buzz, but there were a lot of SaaS startups. There was a lot of B2C e-commerce. There were, in fact, a lot of B2B e-commerce as well. So these were interesting trends. What was really surprising was to see one of the youngest startups in our country, Cred, was at number 11.
Yeah.
And got back some of its own mojo this year, and they were also among the top 20. So these were some interesting trends, and I think the year turned out very interesting for the startup ecosystem altogether.
Okay. What are the other sectors that stood out for you? Something when you looked at the report, something that came as a surprise to you? I know players like Dunzo have done fairly well, and the logistics sector got a huge boost pretty much this year. But something that stood out for you, Sanjeev?
Well, I think Dunzo was a pleasant surprise, and I think so was Cred. I was not expecting Cred to be this high so early on in the game. Both have been a pleasant surprise, and congratulations to them.
Okay, since I also mentioned that we are trying to also decode what part of this trend would we be taking forward in 2021, Aakriti, what is your report pointing out? Have you been able to analyze some of the trends that you think would continue, or sectors that would continue seeing momentum in 2021 as well?
Yes, absolutely. Fintech is something that will continue. We think that it is just scratched the surface and it will go stronger. But the interesting trend there is some of the EV startups. We think EV startups will become far more, Ather is there, but among the ones which were looking when we were analyzing it completely, we saw that EVs might emerge far more next year. What we were missing really, and we want to see more of it, is food tech startups. There were only 2 or 3 there, we think, and probably Sanjeev can comment more on that. Food tech startups, and we were missing Make in India startups. I think manufacturing is something that should, with Chinese displacement, with some of the startups building for India, that can probably be something that we should look forward in the year.
Sanjeev, you want to chime in on that? As Aakriti pointed out, some of the manufacturing startups were missing from this list. And it's not just manufacturing. In fact, another interesting thing is that enterprise tech did not see any other player. I think apart from Freshworks that ranks at 37, that was a sector that was missing representation on this list that Wizikey has put together.
No, I think enterprise tech, B2B SaaS will come. I mean, it may take a year, it may take 2 years, but it will come. There's a lot of activity going on there. Look, manufacturing is a harder climb because, it's not digital that you build an app and then it gets popular and gets downloaded on 100 million phones and then you're in business. It's not so simple. Manufacturing is a much harder climb. So I won't be surprised if manufacturing takes some more time to really make an impact. I don't expect, suddenly 20 out of 100 manufacturing startups next year. If 2 or 3 enter, which are not there this year, I think it's good progress. So manufacturing, be a little more cautious on. But B2B SaaS, I think there's a lot of activity there. A lot of things should happen there.
Absolutely. We just recently saw Zenoti enter the Unicorn Club, and that comes from the SaaS sector. So we hope that momentum continues. But going forward, if I were to ask you to make some estimates in terms of what 2021 would look like, what are the sectors to watch out for? What's under your radar at this point?
Are you asking me or Aakriti?
Sanjeev, you.
Okay, me. No, look, we think Dukaan Tech is interesting. We think, obviously, FinTech is interesting. We think, And fintechs fintechs is so complex and has got so many textures and hues, and that you can have 20 different subsectors there and still have only scratched the surface. Okay, because your fintech cuts across all sectors. So fintech will see a lot of activity still.
Okay, well, 2020 has been a year where big companies and startups have had to make some tough decisions, but several of them are now positive with the fact that IPO is on their card, and there are many companies that are looking at a timeline of 12 to 15 months. So, Sanjeev, again, I would like you to answer this crystal ball question. Again, would we be seeing more IPOs in 2021? And if yes, then what sectors would be in the majority when it comes to listing?
So a lot depends on how this, imminent overseas listing regulation is. Is it allowed, not allowed? What is the fine print? A lot depends on, the companies that have shifted domicile outside India. Some of them may list overseas because they're eligible. A lot will depend on how many companies make a profit and therefore can list in India on the main bourse. And a lot will depend on how much traction the new rules get of SEBI. Which have just been announced, or a paper for discussion has been put out. So a lot will depend on these 3-4 things. But I think if we get two IPOs, it's good going. Next year, but next 2 years, we should get 2 or 3 at least.
2 to 3 IPOs in the next 2 years. That's a word coming in from Sanjeev. But before I wrap up this conversation, Aakriti, you're an entrepreneur yourself, and in the SaaS space, talk to me about some of the learnings that you had in 2020, something that will stay with you for a long time. What was it operating in the PR space for you?
So thank you again. Working from home, I think in 2020, it was a pleasant surprise. We actually ourselves adopted a lot of SaaS tools. Being a SaaS company, most of our employees, most of our people were scattered all over India. And I think that's going to stay for us. That's been a pleasant surprise. We've worked really well. And my team has been so far beautifully, worked across India. So that's one thing that I think will stay. Other learnings was frugality. We wanted to ensure that there was enough runway. And I think that's something we've imbibed, and we're going to make sure that stays as a value with us. So these are 2 important learnings we take over. And I think the third one is that while during this period, we saw our customers demanding a lot of international territories. And going global looks like a very promising thing that we'd be doing in 2021.